Hashtag the Diplomat was murdered. Part 1 Ambassador Marcus Chun adjusted his formal diplomatic robes one last time before entering the Grand Assembly Hall of the Zarathi Council. The massive crystalline structure gleamed under the artificial suns of their capital world, casting rainbow patterns across the polished floors. Representatives from 17 different species filled the tiered seating, their various forms creating a symphony of colors, textures, and sounds that would have overwhelmed most humans. Marcus had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. The Galactic Trade Accords were humanity's chance to finally join the interstellar community as equals, not as the primitive newcomers they had been labeled when first contact occurred. Earth desperately needed the advanced technology and resources that membership would provide, especially the quantum energy cores that could solve their growing power crisis. The Zarathi Chancellor, a towering insectoid being with translucent wings and compound eyes that reflected the light like diamonds, raised one of her 4 arms for silence. Her voice carried through the hall via universal translators, each word precise and calculated. We gather today to consider the application of a human species for full membership in the Galactic Trade Consortium, she announced. Ambassador Chun will present humanity's case. Marcus stepped forward, his heart pounding, but his expression calm. Behind him, holographic displays showed Earth's achievements, their rapid technological advancement, their cultural diversity, their potential contributions to the galactic community. He had rehearsed this presentation hundreds of times, accounting for every possible question or objection. Honored representatives, he began, humanity comes before you not as supplicants, but as partners. We offer our unique perspectives, our innovative spirit, and our determination to contribute to the prosperity of all member species. The presentation went smoothly at first. Marcus outlined Earth's industrial capabilities, their scientific discoveries, and their commitment to peaceful cooperation. Several representatives nodded approvingly, particularly the Vorthak delegation, whose reptilian features reminded him of ancient Earth dragons. But then the questions began. What assurance do we have? Hissed the Cytherian representative, her serpentine form coiling with agitation, that humans won't repeat their violent history among the stars. Your species has a documented tendency toward warfare and aggression. Marcus had expected this. Honored Cytherian, every species has struggled with conflict in their development. What matters is that humanity has learned from its mistakes. Our united Earth government has maintained peace for over a century. The hegemony representative, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline exoskeleton, flickered with what Marcus had learned indicated skepticism. Your military capabilities are concerning. For such a young species, you have developed remarkably efficient methods of destruction. Our military exists solely for defense. Marcus replied firmly. We seek to protect, not to conquer. The debate continued for hours. Some representatives seemed genuinely interested in humanity's potential, while others clearly viewed them as a threat to be contained. Marcus answered each challenge with diplomatic precision, never losing his composure despite the mounting tension in the room. Finally, Chancellor Zarathi called for the preliminary vote. Marcus watched as the representatives activated their voting crystals, each one glowing either blue for acceptance or red for rejection. His stomach clenched as he counted the colors. The result was devastatingly close. 8 votes for acceptance, 9 for rejection. The motion fails, the Chancellor announced. However, given the narrow margin, we will reconvene in 3 standard days for final deliberation and vote. As the assembly dispersed, Marcus felt a mixture of disappointment and hope. 3 days wasn't much time, but it was something. He could use that time to meet with individual representatives, address their concerns more personally. Walking through the corridors of the Zarathi capital, Marcus activated his communication device to send a message to Earth. The quantum entanglement communicator was one of the few advanced technologies humanity had been allowed to use during the diplomatic process. Sarah, he said softly into the device, knowing his wife would receive the message instantly despite the thousands of light years between them. The vote was close, but we didn't make it. I'm going to try to convince them over the next 3 days. I love you. He paused, looking out through a transparent wall at the alien cityscape beyond. Somewhere in the galaxy, Sarah was probably training new recruits at the Special Forces facility, pushing herself and others to their limits as she always did. He smiled slightly, thinking of her strength and determination. If anyone could understand the importance of this mission, it was her. Marcus made his way to his assigned quarters, already planning his strategy for the coming days. He had worked too hard and come too far to give up now. Humanity's future among the stars depended on his success, and he would not fail them. Outside his window, the twin moons of Zorathi rose into the violet sky, their light casting long shadows across the alien landscape. Tomorrow, he would begin the most important negotiations of his life. Hashtag the Diplomat was murdered. Part 2 The attack came in the early hours of the third day, when the Zorathi moons cast their pale light through the crystalline walls of Marcus's quarters. He had spent the previous 2 days in exhausting negotiations, meeting with representatives individually, slowly building support for humanity's cause. The vote was now looking promising, perhaps even likely to succeed. Marcus was reviewing his final presentation when the lights suddenly died. Emergency illumination flickered on, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. His enhanced security system, a gift from Earth's military, immediately activated, sealing the room and sending out a distress signal. But the attackers had come prepared. The wall exploded inward in a shower of crystalline fragments. 3 figures in advanced combat armor poured through the breach, their weapons already trained on Marcus. He recognized the technology immediately. Hegemony energy weapons, military grade. These weren't random criminals or terrorists. This was an assassination squad with official backing. Ambassador Chun. The lead figure spoke through a voice modulator that stripped all emotion from the words. Your species application has been reconsidered. Marcus backed against the far wall, his mind racing. The hegemony fears human competition, he said, trying to buy time while his emergency beacon transmitted. They can't allow a species with our potential to join the consortium. Your potential is precisely the problem, the assassin replied. Humans are too dangerous, too unpredictable. Your elimination will be seen as proof of that instability. The energy weapon charged with a high-pitched whine. Marcus closed his eyes, thinking of Sarah, of Earth, of all the people counting on him. He had failed them. The shot never came. Instead, the assassin's scream of pain echoed through the chamber as something struck him from behind. The other 2 attackers spun around, searching for the new threat, but saw nothing in the red-tinged darkness. A second attacker went down, his weapon clattering across the floor as invisible hands twisted his arm at an impossible angle. The snap of breaking bone was audible even through his armor. The third assassin fired wildly into the shadows, energy bolts scorching the walls and ceiling. Show yourself, he shouted, fear creeping into his modulated voice. A figure materialized from thin air just behind him, and Marcus's heart stopped. Sarah. His wife stood there in full Special Forces stealth gear, her active camouflage system powering down to reveal the black tactical suit that seemed to absorb light. Her face was hidden behind a featureless mask, but Marcus would recognize her movements anywhere. The fluid grace, the deadly precision, the way she moved like violence incarnate. The remaining assassin tried to turn his weapon on her, but Sarah was already moving. She ducked under his aim, drove an elbow into his solar plexus, and followed up with a palm strike to his throat that sent him crashing to the ground, gasping for air that wouldn't come. In less than 30 seconds, all 3 attackers lay unconscious or worse. Sarah stood over them, her breathing steady despite the violence. She reached up and removed her mask, revealing the face Marcus loved so dearly. But her eyes held something he had rarely seen there. Cold, professional anger. Sarah, Marcus whispered, still pressed against the wall. How are you here? How did you even know? She turned to him, and for a moment her expression softened. Your emergency beacon reached Earth 12 hours ago. I took the fastest ship they had. She gestured to the unconscious assassins. I've been tracking these 3 since they entered the building. Hegemony Special Operations, very good at their job. But not good enough, Marcus said, finding his voice. Not nearly good enough. Sarah moved to the broken wall and peered out into the corridor. We need to move. This was just the advance team. There will be others, and they'll be here soon. Marcus grabbed his diplomatic case, the one containing all the documentation for humanity's application. Sarah, I can't leave. The final vote is in 6 hours. If I'm not there, if you're dead, the vote won't matter, she interrupted. They plan to kill you and blame it on human instability, prove that we're too violent for galactic society. Your death would have ended any chance of membership. Then, we make sure I survive to vote, Marcus said firmly. Your special forces, Sarah. You can protect me for 6 hours. She stared at him for a long moment, and he could see her running tactical calculations in her head. Finally, she nodded. 6 hours. But we do this my way. Sarah quickly searched the unconscious attackers, removing their weapons and communication devices. She handed Marcus a small energy pistol. Do you remember your training? Marcus nodded. All diplomatic personnel received basic combat instruction, though he had never expected to use it. Point and shoot. Good enough. Sarah moved to the broken wall and attached something to the frame. Proximity mine. Anyone who comes through here gets a surprise. She turned back to him. We're going to the assembly hall early. I can secure it better than trying to defend this room. They moved through the corridors of the Zarathi capital like ghosts. Sarah had somehow acquired detailed building schematics and knew every maintenance tunnel, service elevator, and hidden passage. Her tactical expertise was evident in every decision, every route choice, every precaution. As they traveled, Marcus began to understand something he had never fully grasped before. His wife wasn't just a soldier or a trainer. She was something else entirely. The way she moved, the way she processed information, the way she anticipated threats that hadn't even materialized yet. Sarah was a weapon that humanity had forged in its most desperate hours, refined through decades of conflict, and perfected through training that would have broken most people. And now that weapon was protecting him, protecting Earth's future, with the same deadly precision she brought to every mission. They reached the assembly hall complex without encountering any more attackers, but Sarah's expression remained tense. They're here, she said quietly, studying her scanner. Multiple heat signatures, advanced equipment. They're setting up a perimeter. Marcus checked his timepiece. 4 hours until the vote. Can we hold them off that long? Sarah's smile was sharp and cold. Marcus, you're about to see why the rest of the galaxy should be afraid of humans. But, more importantly, you're about to see why they should want us as allies instead of enemies. Hashtag the Diplomat was murdered. Part 3. The assembly hall felt different in the pre-dawn hours. Without the bustle of representatives and staff, the vast crystalline chamber seemed almost cathedral-like, its soaring arches and prismatic surfaces reflecting Sarah's tactical lights in dancing patterns across the walls. Sarah worked with methodical efficiency, transforming the diplomatic venue into a fortress. She placed sensors at every entrance, rigged concealed charges at strategic bottlenecks, and established overlapping fields of fire from elevated positions. Marcus watched in fascination as his wife, the woman who made him breakfast every morning and laughed at his terrible jokes, became something else entirely. The main entrance is their most likely approach, she explained while calibrating a motion detector. 3 secondary entrances here, here, and here. Emergency exits can be sealed from my control pad. She pointed to various locations on her tactical display. I've got eyes on all approaches, but they'll come hard and fast when they realize we're here. Marcus set up his presentation materials at the central podium, trying to maintain some sense of normalcy despite the circumstances. How many are out there? 23 heat signatures, probably more in reserve. Sarah didn't look up from her work. Hegemony military, not their usual diplomats. This is a full operation, sanctioned at the highest levels. 23. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Sarah, you can't fight 23 trained soldiers. She paused in her preparations and looked at him with an expression that was part amusement, part deadly seriousness. Marcus, remember what I told you on our third date? About why I never talk about my missions. He remembered. Sarah had been recruited by special forces at 17, trained in programs so classified that most government officials didn't know they existed. She had served for 15 years in operations that officially never happened, against enemies that posed existential threats to humanity. When she retired and became an instructor, it wasn't because she couldn't do the job anymore. It was because she was too good at it, Because some things are better left in the dark, he said quietly. Exactly. Sarah activated her armor's full combat mode, and Marcus watched in amazement as the surface shifted and adapted, becoming something that seemed to drink light rather than reflect it. What you're about to see is why the hegemony wants to keep humans out of the consortium. They're not afraid of our diplomacy or our trade potential. They're afraid of what we become when someone threatens what we protect. The first attack came exactly 1 hour later. The main entrance exploded in a shower of crystalline fragments as hegemony-shocked troops blasted their way through the reinforced doors. Sarah had been expecting it. The moment they breached the entrance, her concealed charges detonated, channeling the blast force directly into their ranks. The disciplined advance became chaos as soldiers were thrown against walls and each other. But they were professionals, and they adapted quickly. Multiple breaches. Sarah's voice was calm despite the violence erupting around them. Stay down, and let me work. Marcus crouched behind the podium as energy bolts sizzled through the air above his head. He could see Sarah moving through the shadows like something out of a nightmare, her stealth systems making her nearly invisible even when she was right in front of the attackers. She struck from impossible angles, appeared behind soldiers who thought their flanks were secure, and vanished again before they could retaliate. The hegemony forces had superior numbers and equipment, but they were fighting an enemy unlike anything in their experience. Sarah didn't engage in direct confrontation. Instead, she used the environment itself as a weapon, triggering structural collapses that cut off reinforcements, redirecting the building's own security systems against the invaders, and exploiting every piece of cover the hall provided. Marcus watched one hegemony soldier round a corner, weapon raised, only to find empty air. A heartbeat later, Sarah dropped from the ceiling directly onto his shoulders, driving him to the ground with surgical precision before disappearing again into the maze of crystalline supports. Another group tried to advance on the podium in formation, but Sarah had anticipated their route. The floor beneath them suddenly gave way as she triggered a precisely placed charge, dropping half the squad into the level below while leaving the chamber's structural integrity intact. How is she doing this? Marcus heard one of the attackers shout over their communication channel, the universal translator picking up their panic conversation. She's just one human. That was when Marcus truly understood what Sarah had meant about the hegemony's fear. It wasn't about human potential in some abstract sense. It was about what humans could become when pushed to their limits, when everything they cared about was threatened. The galaxy had known warfare for millennia, had seen countless species and their military capabilities. But humanity's approach to conflict was different. Where other species fought for territory or resources, humans fought for each other. Sarah wasn't just defending him. She was defending their future together, defending Earth's chance to join the galactic community, defending the hopes and dreams of billions of people who would never know her name. That personal connection, that emotional investment, transformed her from a skilled soldier into something approaching legend. The battle raged for 2 hours. Gradually, the sounds of combat diminished as Sarah systematically eliminated or disabled the attackers. When the last energy weapon fell silent, 23 of the galaxy's finest soldiers lay unconscious or incapacitated throughout the chamber. Sarah emerged from the shadows, her armor scarred but intact, her breathing only slightly elevated. She had fought an entire army by herself, and won. Marcus stood slowly from behind the podium, looking around at the devastation. The assembly hall was damaged, but structurally sound, and, more importantly, the holographic projection systems were still functional. "Status report?" he asked, tried to keep his voice steady. "All hostiles neutralized," Sarah replied, reverting to her professional tone. "No casualties on our side. The chamber is secure for the vote." Marcus checked his timepiece. 1 hour until the representatives arrived for the final session. "Think they'll come?" Sarah was already working on something at her tactical station. "They'll come. I've been monitoring galactic communications. Word of this attack has already reached the other delegations. The hegemony just proved exactly what you've been arguing against." "What do you mean?" She turned to face him, and for the first time since the attack began, she smiled. "They tried to use violence to solve a political problem. They proved that humans aren't the unstable, warlike species here. They are. As if summoned by her words, the first of the arriving representatives appeared at the shattered main entrance. Chancellor Zarathi stepped carefully through the debris, her compound eyes taking in the scene with calculating intelligence. "Ambassador Chun," she said, her voice carrying a note of something that might have been respect. "It seems your species faces considerable opposition to your application." Marcus straightened his diplomatic robes and walked toward the podium. Behind him, Sarah faded back into the shadows, once again becoming just another part of the background. "Indeed we do, Chancellor," he replied. "The question is, will the consortium stand with those who use words to solve problems, or those who resort to murder?" Hashtag the diplomat was murdered. Part 4 the representatives filed into the damaged assembly hall in stunned silence. Word of the attack had spread through the diplomatic quarter like wildfire, and each delegation arrived with their own security details, their expressions ranging from shock to calculation to barely concealed fear. Marcus stood at the podium, his diplomatic robes still dusty from the battle, his presentation materials arranged as if nothing had happened. Behind him, the holographic displays showed the same images of Earth's achievements, but now they carried a different weight. The contrast between the peaceful imagery and the scarred chamber around them spoke volumes about humanity's true nature. Chancellor Zarathi took her place at the center of the semicircular arrangement, her translucent wings catching the light as she surveyed the damage. "Before we proceed with the vote," she announced, "we must address the irregularities that have occurred." The hegemony delegation was noticeably absent. Their seats stood empty, a silent testament to the failure of their operation. Marcus had watched through the building's security feeds as their diplomatic staff hastily evacuated, clearly having lost contact with their military assets. "The attack on Ambassador Chun was a violation of every principle this consortium stands for," continued the Chancellor. "Violence has no place in diplomatic discourse." The Cytherian representative coiled nervously in her seat. But the human's response, the carnage. Her serpentine form seemed to shudder. 23 trained soldiers, defeated by a single individual. How do we reconcile this with their claims of peaceful intentions? Marcus had anticipated this question. In fact, it was exactly what he had hoped someone would ask. "Honored representatives, what you witnessed was not aggression. It was protection. My wife defended not just my life, but the very principles we gather here to uphold." He gestured to the empty hegemony seats. They sought to use murder as a tool of policy, to eliminate those who disagreed with them through violence. My wife responded with precisely calibrated force, neutralizing the threat while maintaining the moral high ground. Not one of those attackers died. They were defeated, not destroyed. The Vorthack representative leaned forward, her reptilian features showing what Marcus had learned to recognize as intense interest. "Your mate accomplished this alone?" "She did." Marcus felt a surge of pride that he didn't try to hide. But, more importantly, she did it for the right reasons. Humans don't fight for conquest or dominance. We fight to protect those we love, to defend principles we believe in, and to ensure that voices like ours can be heard in forums like this. A new voice spoke from the observation gallery. "If I may address the assembly?" Every head turned to see Sarah stepping out of the shadows. She had removed her tactical armor and now wore a simple black uniform with no insignia or decoration. To those who hadn't seen her in action, she might have looked like any other human civilian. But Marcus could see the representatives reacting to something in her presence, an indefinable quality that spoke of barely contained lethality. Chancellor Zarathi's compound eyes focused on her with laser intensity. "You are the individual responsible for defending the ambassador." "I am." Sarah's voice was calm, professional. "Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Chun, retired, Earth Special Forces." "Retired?" The Vorthack representative seemed surprised. "Yet your skills appear quite current." Sarah smiled, and Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He loved that smile, but he also knew what it meant. "Honored representative, a human is never truly retired from protecting those they love. We simply expand our definition of family to include those who share our values and our hopes for the future." The energy being that represented the Alterian collective flickered with what Marcus had learned indicated deep thought. "You deliberately chose non-lethal methods against an enemy that sought to kill you. Why?" Because killing them would have proven their point, Sarah replied without hesitation. They claimed humans were too violent, too dangerous for civilized society. Had I killed them, even in self-defense, that narrative would have had validity. Instead, I demonstrated something more important, that humans can be precise in their use of force, discriminating in their application of violence, and committed to principles even in the heat of combat. The Zarathi Chancellor raised one of her forearms. You speak of love and protection as motivating forces. Most species outgrow such emotional approaches to conflict resolution. Sarah's expression hardened slightly. With respect, Chancellor, I would argue that most species have forgotten what truly matters. We don't fight because we enjoy it or because we seek glory. We fight because some things are worth protecting, worth preserving, worth dying for if necessary. Love isn't a weakness to be outgrown. It's the source of our greatest strength. Marcus stepped forward. Honored representatives, this is what humanity offers the consortium. Not just our technology or our resources, but our perspective. We believe that civilization is worth fighting for, that peace is worth protecting, that the bonds between individuals and communities are more valuable than any territorial expansion or resource acquisition. The crystalline hegemony's empty seats seemed to loom larger in the chamber. Their absence spoke louder than any argument Marcus could make. They had resorted to assassination when diplomacy didn't go their way, proving exactly what kind of species they truly were. The hegemony claimed we were too violent, Marcus continued. Yet when faced with opposition, they chose murder. When we faced the same challenge, we chose to defend ourselves while maintaining our moral principles. Which approach better serves the values this consortium was founded on? The Cytherian representative spoke again, but her tone had changed. The precision of the response, it suggests remarkable self-control under extreme stress. More than that, added the Vorthak representative, it suggests a species that has learned to weaponize restraint itself, to turn limitation into strength. Sarah nodded. Every human child learns that having the power to hurt someone doesn't give you the right to do so. Our strength comes not from our capacity for violence, but from our ability to choose when and how to apply it. Today, I could have killed every one of those attackers. I chose not to, because their deaths would have served no purpose beyond revenge. The energy being that was the Altarian representative pulsed with a rhythm Marcus had never seen before. This concept of selective application of force based on moral considerations, it is not common in our experience. Because most species see conflict as binary, Sarah replied. Win or lose, kill or be killed, conquer or submit. Humans have learned to see a spectrum of possibilities between those extremes. We can be gentle with children and fierce with those who threaten them. We can show mercy to the defeated and implacability to the aggressor. We can love our enemies enough to defeat them without destroying them. Chancellor Zarathi was silent for a long moment, her compound eyes reflecting the light as she processed what she had heard. Finally, she spoke. The vote on humanity's application will now proceed. All those in favor of admitting the human species to full membership in the Galactic Trade Consortium. Marcus held his breath as the voting crystals began to glow. Blue light filled the chamber as one after another. The representatives registered their approval. Even species that had been skeptical before, even those who had voted against humanity in the preliminary session, now cast their support. When the final tally was displayed, the result was overwhelming. 15 votes in favor, 2 abstentions, and 0 votes against. Chancellor Zarathi rose from her seat. By the authority vested in this assembly, humanity is hereby granted full membership in the Galactic Trade Consortium, with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities thereof. The chamber erupted in a mixture of congratulations and respectful applause. But Marcus only had eyes for Sarah, who stood quietly in the observation area, watching him with the same love and pride he felt for her. They had one more than just membership. They had shown the galaxy what humanity truly was, not perfect, not peaceful, but principled, not without the capacity for violence, but with the wisdom to apply it judiciously. Not a species to be feared, but one to be respected. #the Diplomat was murdered Part 5 6 months later, Marcus stood in the observation deck of the newest addition to the Zarathi capital, the human embassy. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see the bustling spaceport where ships from Earth regularly arrived, carrying diplomats, traders, scientists, and cultural ambassadors. The integration had proceeded faster than anyone had dared hope. Sarah joined him at the window, carrying 2 cups of coffee, one of Earth's most popular exports to the galaxy. The simple beverage had become a symbol of human culture, representing the warmth and hospitality that had surprised many species who expected humanity to be cold and militaristic. The Vordak delegation wants to establish a cultural exchange program, Sarah said, handing him his cup. Apparently, their younglings are fascinated by human concepts of family structure and emotional bonding. Marcus smiled, remembering his first meeting with the reptilian Vordak ambassador. The fierce-looking creature had spent an hour asking detailed questions about human child-rearing practices, genuinely puzzled by the concept of parents who would sacrifice their own interests for their offspring's well-being. "Any word from the Consortium Council about the hegemony situation?" he asked. Sarah's expression darkened slightly. "They've been formally censured and suspended from all military committees. 3 of their colony worlds have already applied for independence, and 2 have requested human mediation in their transition negotiations. The fallout from the assassination attempt have been swift and devastating for the crystalline hegemony. When the full scope of their operation became public, including intercepted communications ordering Marcus's death, the galactic community had reacted with unprecedented unity. Species that had never agreed on anything before had come together to condemn the use of assassination as a diplomatic tool. More importantly, the incident had fundamentally changed how other species viewed humanity. The narrative of humans as unpredictably violent had been replaced by something far more complex and, in many ways, more intimidating. Humans as precisely violent, capable of extraordinary force, but disciplined enough to apply it only when necessary, and only to the degree required. "Chancellor Zarathi wants to meet with you this afternoon," Sarah continued. "Something about a new proposal from the Alterian Collective." Marcus raised an eyebrow. The energy beings had been among humanity's strongest supporters since the vote, but they rarely made formal proposals. "Any idea what it's about?" "Peacekeeping," Sarah said simply. "They want to establish a consortium peacekeeping force to handle situations like the hegemony incident, and they want humans to lead it." The implications hit Marcus immediately. In less than a year, humanity had gone from being rejected applicants to being asked to serve as the galaxy's protectors. It was exactly what the hegemony had feared. Humans not just joining the galactic community, but potentially dominating it through moral authority rather than military conquest. "That's a dangerous precedent," he said carefully. "Other species might see it as validation of their fears about human imperialism." Sarah sipped her coffee thoughtfully. "Or they might see it as evidence that we can be trusted with power because we understand its proper use. The Altarians aren't proposing this out of fear, Marcus. They're proposing it out of respect." A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Marcus activated the embassy's main screen to see Chancellor Zarathi's compound eyes looking back at him. Her species' expressions were still difficult to read, but he had learned to recognize the subtle signs of excitement in her posture. "Ambassador Chun," she said without preamble, "are you familiar with the Outer Rim conflict?" Marcus nodded. A 3-way territorial dispute between minor species had been simmering for decades, occasionally flaring into actual combat. The consortium had tried multiple diplomatic interventions, all unsuccessful. The Kalari, Finthic, and Ulgrim delegations have submitted a joint request, the Chancellor continued. They want human mediation, not consortium mediation, specifically human mediation. They've seen how you handled the hegemony situation, and they believe humans understand something about conflict resolution that other species have missed. Sarah and Marcus exchanged glances. This was unprecedented. Species in active conflict requesting intervention from the newcomers to the galactic community. "What's their reasoning?" Marcus asked. According to their joint statement, other species either ignore emotional factors in conflict or are overwhelmed by them. Humans, they claim, understand how to acknowledge emotional truths while maintaining logical frameworks for resolution. The Chancellor paused. They want someone who can be both warrior and peacemaker. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. The same qualities that had made other species fear humanity, the same capacity for control violence that had nearly cost them consortium membership, were now being seen as assets for peacekeeping. There's more. Chancellor Zarathi continued. The Philosophical Assembly of Worlds has submitted a formal inquiry about human concepts of justice and mercy. Apparently, the idea that these concepts can coexist, even strengthen each other, is causing significant debate in academic circles across the galaxy. Marcus felt a surge of pride, mixed with responsibility. We're not perfect, Chancellor. We make mistakes, we struggle with our own conflicts. Precisely why they trust you, she replied. A species that claims perfection cannot understand failure. A species that has struggled with its own darkness can help others find light. After the communication ended, Marcus and Sarah stood in silence for a long moment, watching the ships come and go in the spaceport below. Earth transports mixed with vessels from dozens of other worlds, creating a tapestry of cooperation that would have been unimaginable just months before. We started this journey trying to prove we weren't too violent for the galaxy, Sarah said quietly. Turns out the galaxy needed to learn how to be violent in the right ways. Marcus nodded. The hegemony thought they were preventing human expansion. Instead, they gave us the platform to demonstrate exactly why the galaxy needs us. A new ship was arriving, sleek and unfamiliar. Marcus recognized the design from his diplomatic briefings. A joint construction vessel, built by 5 different species working together on a project to terraform a dead world for refugee settlement. The ship's construction had been overseen by human engineers, not because they had the best technology, but because they had proven best at getting different species to work together toward common goals. What do you think Earth would say if they could see this? Sarah asked. Marcus smiled, thinking of the blue world where their journey had begun. I think they'd say we did exactly what we were supposed to do. We didn't conquer the galaxy or transform it into something else. We showed it what it could become. Outside the window, the diverse fleet of ships continued their eternal dance of arrival and departure, carrying with them the hopes and dreams of countless species. And at the center of it all, humanity had found its place not as rulers or conquerors, but as the bridge between what was and what could be. The diplomat had been marked for murder, but he had survived. His wife had been revealed as something beyond the galaxy's understanding of warfare. And through their trials, humanity had proven that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from the willingness to fight, but from the wisdom to know when fighting serves a greater peace. In the end, that had been the most human thing of all.